Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that honestly sounds like it was ripped straight from a Hollywood script, the capture of a sitting president. We're going to break down exactly how this unprecedented military operation went down, and maybe more importantly, what it means for the rest of us.
So picture this. It's January 3rd, the dead of night. Suddenly, a series of massive explosions rips through the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. And let me tell you, this was no random act. This was the opening shot of a meticulously planned, high-stakes assault. Just a few hours later, this absolutely stunning image pops up online, posted by President Donald Trump himself, and it confirmed the unbelievable. Venezuela's leader, Nicolás Maduro, was in U.S. custody. I mean, just look at the details here. The blindfold, the noise-canceling headphones, even the gray sweatsuit. This wasn't just about capturing a person, it was about sending a very, very loud message.
The official announcement dropped at 5:21 a.m. local time, and you can bet it sent shockwaves across the entire planet. But an event like this, as sudden as it seemed, doesn't just happen out of nowhere. No, this was the boiling point after years and years of tension.
So you're probably asking, how on earth did we get here? To really get it, we need to rewind the clock a bit and look at the long path to this intervention.
You know, the pressure cooker had been building for a long time. It really kicked off back in 2020 with a U.S. indictment. Then it escalated big time after a really contested election in 2024. But 2025 is when things went into overdrive, with something called Operation Southern Spear. We're talking a full-on naval blockade aimed at Venezuela's oil shipments and other alleged criminal activities.
And this, right here, is the key to the whole legal argument. The U.S. officially labeled Maduro's government the Cartel of the Suns. Now that wasn't just a catchy nickname. It was a critical legal move. It basically meant Washington stopped seeing Venezuela as a sovereign state and started treating it like a transnational criminal organization.
And to put their money where their mouth was, the U.S. put an absolutely unprecedented $50 million bounty on Maduro's head in 2025. This wasn't just diplomatic posturing anymore. This was a clear signal that in the eyes of the U.S., the president of Venezuela was now a wanted fugitive.
Okay, so the stage is set, the legal framework is in place. How did they actually pull off this incredibly audacious operation? Well, the plan, codenamed Operation Absolute Resolve, was basically a masterclass in 21st century warfare.
The whole thing went down in 4 super precise stages, and it was all over in less than 5 hours. It started with a total electronic blackout, then came overwhelming air power, then the quiet insertion of elite ground teams, and finally, the capture itself. The speed and coordination were just remarkable.
And when I say overwhelming, I mean it. We're talking about a force of more than 150 U.S. aircraft. This was a joint force of the most advanced stealth fighters, bombers, and electronic warfare jets all swarming the skies at once.
Now get this, because this is maybe the coolest part. The very first shots fired, they weren't missiles, they were electrons. Before a single bomb fell, a massive cyber and electronic attack plunged Caracas into total darkness and silence, cutting off all communications. The Venezuelan military was basically rendered blind and deaf before the fight even started.
And this slide really tells one of the biggest stories of the whole operation. You see, Venezuela had spent billions on a sophisticated air defense system, built with top-of-the-line Chinese and Russian technology. And it completely, totally failed. The Chinese so-called anti-stealth radar was paralyzed, the Russian missile batteries were toast. It was nothing short of a total technological humiliation.
Meanwhile, on the ground, the story was just as wild. Elite Delta Force operators hit Maduro's fortress-like compound with such incredible speed, which some called a bum rush, that he was literally captured while scrambling to get into a solid steel safe room. He couldn't even get the door shut.
So as you can imagine, the impact of this raid went far, far beyond Caracas. It triggered a geopolitical shockwave that was felt in capitals all over the world, but nowhere more intensely than in Beijing.
You just can't make this timing up. The American attack unfolded just hours after Maduro had been meeting with a high-level Chinese delegation, literally reaffirming their strategic partnership. It was a public and, frankly, deeply embarrassing slap in the face for China, invalidating its role as a global protector.
And that diplomatic embarrassment? It's backed up by a massive financial risk. China is Venezuela's biggest creditor. We're talking an estimated $67 billion in loans to the regime. That is an enormous investment that is now at serious risk of just vanishing.
And this chart here shows you exactly why that money was flowing. For years, Venezuelan oil was the economic lifeline for Maduro and a key energy source for Beijing. I mean, look at that. 85% of its crude exports were going to China. Well, that relationship has now been completely severed overnight.
In the hours after the raid, President Trump made this pretty remarkable declaration. He said the U.S. would run the country until a stable transition could happen. He explicitly framed this as a modern version of the Monroe Doctrine, basically drawing a line in the sand and declaring the Western Hemisphere off limits.
But, as you'd expect, the international reaction was anything but unified. The United Nations Secretary General came out almost immediately, condemning the raid and calling it a dangerous precedent that shreds the rules of international law.
And this chart really paints the picture of that global split. On the left, you've got this big group of nations, China, Russia, and others, that flat out condemned it. In the middle, you have many U.S. allies urging restraint, and then on the far right, a much smaller group that actually came out and praised the operation.
So, with Maduro out of the picture and on a plane to a New York courtroom, the billion-dollar question is, what happens now? The future for Venezuela, and honestly for the entire region, is incredibly uncertain. I mean, the country is facing a laundry list of daunting challenges. Taking out one guy doesn't magically solve any of this. You've got a potential power vacuum, an economy that is completely cratered, and the monumental task of rebuilding an oil industry that analysts say will need over $100 billion and at least a decade of peace.
On a grander scale, this whole event really signals a potential return to an era of direct, forceful U.S. interventionism in its own backyard. This Monroe Doctrine, as it's been dubbed, sends a crystal-clear message to rivals like China and Russia. Their influence in the Americas will be met with force.
And ultimately, this whole incredible episode leaves us with a profound and maybe pretty unsettling question about the future of global security. Where exactly is the line between justice and intervention? And what happens when one powerful nation decides it has the right to cross that line whenever it wants?